What we have here is a Prentiss Model 50 machinist vise. So this is a 3-inch, I think it's actually 3 1/4 inch jaw, something like 25-pound machinist vise. From what I can read, these were manufactured anywhere from the early 1900s to maybe 1930s. So this article is probably in the neighborhood of 100 years old, and it's in pretty darn good shape. So the sort of shank portion of the let's call it the male jaw. There probably are proper terms for this sort of thing. The shank portion of the male jaw has, as you can see, has not been used as an anvil and beat the shit out of like they are on so many of these old vices. It's such a shame. The handle is pretty much perfectly straight. Really nice shape. I do like these designs where the lead screw is covered. Now, although this article is in quite good order, you may have noticed from the thumbnail and the opening shot this bright red apparent corrosion. And indeed, that bright red corrosion is apparent, or I should say only just. In an effort to fit in with the YouTube Vise restoration crowd, the crowd that deliberately and artificially distresses restoration articles to make their restoration more dramatic, I've done just the same. I kind of wanted to see how it would look on camera and if it would be believable. The eagle-eyed of you may have noticed something not quite right about that corrosion. Congratulations, you passed the test. What I did there essentially is applied a brownish red paint, and with the paint wet, I sort of caked on some cinnamon powder. So really close up to the eye, it's not very convincing, but I don't know, boys and girls. Were you fooled? Anyway, apart from the red, let's call them accents, the vise is untouched, at least as I found it. So what we're going to do is take it apart, clean it up with a wire brush. I know there's lots of people that don't like using harsh abrasives like a wire brush, but in this case, if you don't like that, then don't do that to your vise. I'm going to do it to mine. So let's start by taking it apart. One issue I noticed right away is, I don't know if you can see that, is the retention fastener is missing, and it looks like somebody had made efforts to replace it, or replace its function anyways, by staking that shaft. So if we want to get this apart, we're going to have to address those stakes. I think I can just grind them out or use a carbide burr, and we'll have this apart in no time. Otherwise, the whole vise looks like it's in really good shape. The female end looks really good, really clean. No real evidence of any abuse. You'll be excited to see this turn around into something really pretty. So I decided what I'm going to try and do first is smush those stakes back down with a punch, or in this case a nail set. If I can sort of smush them back down where they came from, or where that, smush down the material that's been uplifted in the stake, then I could probably slip the collar past and maybe I can clean it up later. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so we got that apart without too much collateral damage. I don't know why. I don't know why you would do that. Why would you go through the trouble of staking it? Just get another fucking fastener. The threads are fine. I don't know if you can see that with the focus, but the threads appear to be just fine. Just get another fastener. And anyway, I don't know. Otherwise, the lead screw looks pretty darn good. Again, super stoked. How this bar is totally straight. It's just a nice piece of work, this vise. What I'll probably do is I saw that it doesn't have, there's no bushing, so I'll have to make a new bushing or buy a new bushing. Yeah, not something that's super critical, but just something to make it nice. Next, what I want to do is get this nut out of here. So the way that that's held in is by this pin. That's I'm expecting that that's a tapered pin, and that should be drived out from the bottom. So we're going to push that out, and then this whole affair is going to go in a hot bath of soapy water, and then we'll clean it all up with a wire brush. Yeah, that thing is wedged in there so tightly. I think I'm just going to leave it. I wrapped on it pretty hard. I think that that's it for me. I don't want to beat on it anymore. It didn't budge. It didn't budge at all, and I hit it pretty hard. We're just going to leave that nut in there. We'll clean around it. It'll be fine. Okay, now these guys are ready to go in this hot soapy water. I put these little coat hangers on them just so they're a little easier to grab onto with a pair of pliers or whatever once they're in the water. Let's go start getting them cleaned up. Alright, so we got these all painted up. I think they look really, really good. So now just let's take off the masking and start putting it back together. Yeah, that's good enough. So we've got our set screw. I'm just going to put a couple of nuts on there. Which nuts, you may ask? These nuts. Put a couple of nuts on there so I can hold on to her. Alright, now let's put this thing back together. We have our lead screw. I did make a new bushing / washer. I chose to go with copper. For one, I thought it would be pretty cool, but I had copper bar stock that would fit, and I didn't have brass. So we'll see how this works out. I think there's a fair likelihood it's gonna get gummed up and not work as well as brass, but it's fairly soft, no harm done. We can swap it out for brass later. I also included, I made another sort of dimple, a retention dimple for the set screw. This was the original one. Made a new one, sort of repositioned it a little bit further away so that I could fit this bushing. Here's our set screw. Put a point on the end so that it would either dig in. I think I hadn't drilled this yet, so that point will dig in to the detent. So I just took a cap screw fastener, cut it down, ground a point on it, ground a slot into it. So that'll work for what we need it for. Our collar, just painted it, cleaned it, painted it. And the male jaw looks pretty good, can't complain. So we'll just slap this together and see how it works. First we're gonna assemble the lead screw into the male jaw, and to do that we're going to slip this collar in first as we sort of guide the lead screw in. But before I do that, I'm going to put some gloves on and apply some grease. Normally I'm not at all liberal, or at least modern day liberal, but when it comes to application of grease, I'm very liberal. Then we're going to hold this collar as we feed the lead screw in there. Go. Screw, where'd our set screw go? Start that guy. Okay, now our lead screw is all greased up and installed into the male jaw. One thing I like to do is rust proof or rust resist these uncoated parts as best I can. And the way I like to do that is use wax. So things like the steel top of this workbench is all coated in wax. That's largely what keeps it from rusting, and all the grease and oil and fucking shit that gets all over it. But this is nice because it's not oily, so when you handle it with your hands, I mean, yeah, sometimes you get a little bit of wax on your hands, but it's not oily, and it retains pretty well. It stays on the thing that you're waxing. So all I do is kind of get a little bit on my fingers, and we're just going to rub it on here. I just let that sit out in the sun for, I don't know, about an hour or so, so it's nice and warm and nice and soft. So we'll just kind of touch all the bare surfaces, and then we'll just wipe off the excess with a paper towel. This works really, really well, but it's not purely maintenance free. You got to touch it up every once in a while, but I find that this for me is preferable compared to keeping everything covered in oil. There we go, that's that guy. And we're just going to put his jaws a little bit. Let's guide this guy in there. Okay, so now that we've got it painted and all assembled back together, one more thing we're going to do is we want to protect this handle that we've brushed and cleaned, and we're going to do that with some cold blue. So I just have some perma blue, usually used for firearms and that kind of thing. So the way we're going to do that is just kind of dip it and brush it on there. And you can kind of see it change color right before your eyes. It's pretty neat. Now that's been sitting for about 20 minutes or so. Now I'm just going to scrub off the excess with the steel wool. We'll see if we need to apply any more coatings, but I think generally not. This should do what we want. Really, I should have done this before I assembled the handle, but it's not that big of a deal. Let me soak up a little bit of the excess.